On today's show, I am joined by Bryce Hendricks to talk about the NBA draft from the Hawks standpoint. It's a two-part episode, and part one's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1987 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday evening into Wednesday here in early June. And I want to encourage you, as I always do at the top of the podcast, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to this podcast anywhere you find your podcasts. That includes Apple, includes Spotify, as well as YouTube on the video side. So please like this video as you are watching it. And also tell your friends and colleagues about this podcast. In a moment, I'll be joined by Bryce Hendricks, who co-hosts the Upside Swings podcast for an NBA draft chat in two parts. This is part one you're listening to right now, and then part two should be available in the same podcast feed as soon as part one is finished. No other news to talk about with the Hawks on this Tuesday evening, so without any further delay, we'll dive in now with myself, Bryce, and the NBA draft. All right, I'm joined once again by one of the co-hosts, I suppose, of the Upside Swings podcast, a guest on this show previously, a Moget enthusiast. Bryce Hendricks is here. Hello, man. How are you?
I'm great. It's always great to be on. Brad, this has become an annual tradition now. So I'm anytime I get the DM, I always jump at the opportunity, and have not been too surprised by the lack of Moget minutes, but hoping for next year that it's a big step up for him.
Yeah, if we have new listeners, I said that for a reason. Bryce was around Moget at Washington State, was following him closely in a way that I even wasn't during his college days. So we had Bryce on talking about Mo and also the draft stuff. But you guys did a great job on the podcast. And Mo did play a lot at the end of the year. People are very excited locally about Moget. It's kind of ironic, and I promise we'll talk about the draft in a second. But I think when you and I talk, maybe you can correct me. I think most defense is so far ahead of where I thought it would be, and his offense is behind where I thought it would be. It's kind of an interesting reminder that the draft is an inexact science. Moget being a defensive first prospect is not what I expected, but here we are.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's that was definitely not the sell for him, but the something that we'll talk about with certain guys today, I'm sure, is that college contacts can sometimes be overrated in terms of projecting what guys will do. Maybe not necessarily how good they will be, but in terms of just purely what they are actually good at. The NBA tends to be ruthlessly efficient at finding out what someone's value actually is, versus college coaches are way more likely to try and fit a square peg into a round hole in that way. So definitely interesting. But now, Moget, there's an NBA player I had a class with. Cam Ward just got drafted, so I will get to say that I had a class with an NFL quarterback. So I feel WSU is kind of on the map now in pro sports again.
Listen, when Moget wins Most Improved Player next year, after Dyson Daniels did this year, you'll be even better in the pantheon of Hawks fans.
Absolutely.
So, look, we're gonna go a little bit on in this conversation. It might even be two parts. We'll see. But I want to ask you. I've been asking this, not everybody, but just kind of want to get a feel for what you think of the class, because the Hawks are in this weird spot, and we talked about it a little before we started recording. But the Hawks have these two picks, and they're not bunched together, but they're also not separated by as much as it a lot of guys that could go 13 could also fall to 22 and vice versa. And I wonder what you both think of the class, in the middle, basically, beyond Cooper and maybe Dylan Harper or whatever. But the strength of the class, and also philosophically, even big picture, however you want to frame it, how you would kind of look at this class if you were the Hawks, acknowledging that they have a young core already. They don't really have a glaring positional need. They all those things, they have all these interesting intricacies of a team that has two picks and they're on their way up and all those things. So what do you make of the class and what the Hawks should be kind of doing at 13 and 22, broadly speaking?
Yeah, the class is so interesting because I really spent a good chunk of it not thinking I was going to like it very much. And I think a big reason that a lot of draft Twitter doesn't like it is because there's no like Jalen Slauson in this class. There's no random dude who a small subset of people are all going to have top 20 randomly because they just had a crazy outlier stat page, because the truth is 90% of those people are going back to college. That's just this class is really missing on those kind of late first, early second swings, guys who would be late risers. I even said early in the class, I wonder with how things are right now, would like Jalen Williams, the second team All NBA member and second best player on a potential champion, would he have had to go like transfer to UCLA before going to the league? Had he been at Santa Clara right now? I don't know. It's kind of the draft is kind of at that weird point right now, but I've really come around to the idea that I think this is the type of draft where there might be an all-star in the late lottery. Not to say that there's going to be a Shea or a Tyrese Halliburton or anything like that, but I do think that there are like 5 guys or so that I really like that I think have a shot to become that level of player, an all-star level player at the very least. And they're mocked kind of all over the place. And so as for the Hawks, like if it was me, my goal would be, okay, well, let's sit at 13 and see. And if one of those 5 guys falls to 13, I'd take them. To be honest, if one of the top 10 guys falls to 13, I'd probably just take them. Like I feel like there's a pretty stark difference on my board around 8 to 11, somewhere in there. And then I would also really consider, if there's someone I really liked at like 8 or 9, I'd consider packaging these 2 picks and trading up. I think there is diminishing returns in this draft from 13 to 22. The value is pretty flat, and in some ways that's good. That means you could potentially get a really good player at 13 or at 22. But in some ways that's bad because you're not really maximizing your value there. I think if there's a world like not to get too into individual people early.
Yeah, it's fine.
But if Kon Knueppel is like, if he falls to 8 or 9, I'd do probably whatever I could to trade up and get him if I'm the Hawks, to be honest. Like I'm really high on Kon, and he's the type of player that I think, makes sense both in a short term, hey, we want to be good at basketball and chase the bottom end of the playoffs or whatever, and also hey, I think that's one of the guys that could potentially be an all-star from this class that might fall. I'd be much happier getting him with combining those 2 picks than I would getting 2 guys who I like legitimately less at 13 to 22.
It's interesting because, and there's a reason why, this is part of the reason why I have a lot of guests, which I try to have a lot of guests on. Like, there's disparate views, including like, honest between me and you, and I listen to your podcast. I am not a trade up guy in this class. I'm not saying that you can't do it. I'm not a trade up guy in general, which is probably why I feel that way about this class. Like, I think it permeates to me always, to be honest with you. I do like Kon, for instance. Like, I'm pretty high on Kon. I don't know if I'm higher than you, but we can get into that if you want to. But it is interesting, like, where people's delineations fall. Like, for me, we agree on it being kind of flat in the middle in general, and that can be good and bad. It can be good if you're at 22 and you can get your 13th player. It can be bad at 13 if your tier is at 11 or 10 or whatever you just said it was. If that's true and you're at 13 and nobody falls to you, that isn't where you want to be, because then you're at the top of the next tier. That's not good value and all those things. So I just find it really interesting, even in general, before we dive into players, like where those dividing lines are, because I don't know how big of a gap there is for me between 10 and 17 or 10 and 22, but it really is about like where that line is, and that's just, it's a philosophical thing. That's why this is honestly part of why I love the draft. It's like people that are smart can look at this stuff very differently, teams, and I'm sure you have this experience too. Like, as much as I do this more and more, people around the league have totally different viewpoints on stuff. Like people with agencies, people with teams and scouts, and it's like one guy will think that the same exact player is just like undraftable, and other guys like, oh, first round pick. And it's like, I don't know. I think it's just interesting. I want to start there. I'm doing this broad on purpose, but I find it fascinating. And even when you said that, I'm like, people are going to laugh when they're listening, because I've been like pretty anti trade up, and now you want to. And by the way, I don't think you're crazy. I think it's not unreasonable. It's just a philosophical thing.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I wouldn't trade up for the guy that's like literally 8th on my board.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That I'm seeing, like, just for example, I don't really pay attention to consensus mock drafts until I'm going to go on a show like this.
It's probably
and
good.
As I'm looking, I'm like, oh man, like, why is Kon Knueppel at not? Why is this is not really a good fit guy, but why is Kasparas Jakachonis at 10? Why is Noa Essengue at 11? Like, are those guys that are, and maybe you don't even have to trade up then. I mean, maybe a Derik Queen falls to 13 and that's your take, or whatever, right? Like, I'm not even saying that you have to trade up, because I think there's a good chance that one of those guys falls. But the truth is, NBA teams have more knowledge about this than me. And if they think that one of those 5 guys might be there at 13, then you can absolutely stand pat. And then you could potentially get the guy you had at 13 at 22. But for me, like that's where, I'll just get into it. Like, I draw my line at 5 right now, where I have, Flag at the top. And then that next group for me is kind of Knueppel, Queen, Jakachonis, and Dylan Harper. Those are the 5 guys in this draft that I like really like, and not necessarily in that order, but that's kind of my group.
Yeah.
And I think there's a solid chance one of those guys is there at 13, and you can just draft him. But if one is going to fall to 9, I don't know that it's hard to put a package together to go up and get up to 9. You might not even have to include 22. There's probably some other machinations there, just because I think you're right that NBA teams view this draft very differently too. I think there's a lot of, this draft is really full of eye of the beholder players. There's not a ton of like McCall Bridgeses in this draft of everyone knows who this guy is. There's just a question of just how high do you want to draft this guy? There's a lot of, man, Derik Queen, I think he's going to be like a superstar. And then there's going to be people who watch Derik Queen. There's no way he could touch the floor on my basketball team. Like the Rockets, I know there's Rockets fans that really like Derik Queen. I don't think Ime Udoka would let Derik Queen touch the basketball floor within the next 3 years. That's just, there's just there's really stark differences in how teams and individuals view certain players. And fit, I think, is going to come up way more in this draft than it generally does, which I think is wrong. I think that's the wrong process. I still think even in drafts where it feels like fit should matter more, you should still not think about fit. But I've heard it a lot in this draft, and there's a lot of guys that are rising because they're the more easy to envision exactly what they look like prospects. I think that's a big reason Carter Bryant has risen so much. It's because everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's a 3-and-D guy. We know what he's going to be in the NBA. And there's so many guys that are these mystery boxes that teams are trying to, unlock.
Today's show is brought to you by OpenPhone. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you actually had an urgent need, perhaps for a plumber or a service provider. If they didn't answer the phone the first time, did you wait? You probably didn't. You probably moved on to something else, and that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system. It's built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or your computer. And OpenPhone lets you manage your business calls and text from a single app, and the shared inbox feature is a game changer for you. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat at all. And OpenPhone's AI agent can also handle your calls after hours, answer common questions, and capture any leads so that you never actually miss a customer. OpenPhone is offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's OPENPHONE, openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over for you at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. It's an interesting point of nuance that you said there, and I promise we'll move on to guys who are maybe more in their range. But if you have a top 5 like you do, for instance, it's easier sell to trade from 13 to 8 or 9, which is about as high as you're probably going to get realistically without going crazy all in. And if you have a top 5 like you do, and one of those guys gets to 9, you think you're getting a better value now. You know what I mean? That is an interesting point of nuance, and I'm 100% with you on the fit versus BPA thing. Earlier this week, as we're talking, I did a show, not an entire show, a segment based on guys that I liked more than the consensus boards that are out there. And I tried to give the caveat, consensus boards can be fraught right now, especially this early. There's some intel, there's not some intel. What are they all made of? It's pure scouting, etc. And I could find 6, 7, 8 guys that I was pretty clearly higher on than the consensus. But what does that mean? Does that mean they're going to be there at 13? No, it doesn't mean they're going to be there at 13 and all those things. So, and everything in between. I notice. So you already gave a scenario about let's say Derik Queen or Kasper Siakam. Somebody falls to 13 unexpectedly. I've been saying the whole time, I'm not a big trade up guy, but if somebody that's higher on my board falls to me, it's not like I'm going to pass on them. There's really not an archetype of this class in this class as the Hawks that I just wouldn't take. Like, the only guy that I've even thought about saying that about would be maybe Akashonas, if you think he's like a point guard and you have Trae Young. And I get maybe some fit stuff there. But if he's the best player on your board, I think you still take him if he's available at 13 because I think you're getting a good value. Same with like Jeremiah Fierce. Like, Jeremiah Fierce probably won't be there, I don't think. But if he just falls to you, like, if you love him, you just kind of take him. That's kind of how I feel about most things. So I think you and I are relying on the best player available versus fit thing. I'm not saying fit doesn't matter at all, but for me, it's more of a tiebreaker. Like, I don't think it needs to be projectable. And one thing that is, I feel like I've said every time I do a podcast, you're not drafting for your rookie season. Like, I know you know that, but like, there's a lot of depth charts. Like, oh, this guy's going to be this year. I'm like, that's not why you're taking this guy. You're taking this guy for 2 or 3 years from now. It has nothing. I shouldn't say it's nothing to do with this coming season, but it really is not why you're drafting anyone. I wouldn't say.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's, there's a lot of classic examples, but I think, especially with Trae Young right now, not taking a point guard because you have Trae Young, especially if it's a bigger point guard, like I do think Jonas is a point guard to be completely fair.
I do too, and because he's bigger. Like, for me, one thing I've ever said about this, not to cut you off, but like, I wouldn't love taking a small point guard, like a point guard only. That would be like maybe the only thing I'd even blanch at a little bit. Even then, I'm not saying you can't do it, but if Jonas is 6, like, he can play with Trae Young. Like, those guys can play together. Why couldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I also think that you're probably not in a place where you should be drafting like Trae Young is going to be here for 10 years anyways. Like,
yeah, it's reasonable too.
I think the Hawks are one of those teams that I think is really fun to think about in this draft, because I think they really are they could kind of go anywhere from here. There's a lot of pieces that are kind of tied down. Like I love Jalen Johnson, and that's one of those like I've learned more from Jalen Johnson's success in the league than I've learned from any other basketball player I've evaluated, because I was so low on Jalen Johnson because I thought he couldn't shoot, and I kind of thought like the handle was fake. And I was so dumb because he's just so smart and he's so big and so athletic that it just doesn't matter. Like, and I've learned so much from about his functional strength, and also I think he's just a really hard worker. Like, he's gotten so much better than he was at Duke. Like, that stuff matters. Like, I love Onyeka Okongwu, and I remember listening to your podcast and and other Locked On guys, and there's a lot of beating the drum, and I got to see Onyeka Okongwu play in person, and I think he had like 26 and 15 against WSU while playing with another big, and I was like, there's no way that's not a top 10 pick. So like I like a lot of the Hawks guys, but I don't think there's anyone on this team that you're like, hey, if we think we can get a star at that position, we don't take it. I just don't think you're in that position. And so, at 13, my ideal guy for the Hawks is my ideal guy for every person in this, every team in this draft outside of the Dallas Mavericks. Is probably Kon Knueppel. I think that he is really underrated in terms of his star outcomes, because I think people box him into he's just a shooter. And I think they underrate the defense. I think the defense is solid. And I think they really underrate how good of a driver and a passer he is. He has a legitimately really solid first step. And even though the second and third steps for extension aren't great, he's just so strong, and he's able to, really get downhill. When he had a higher usage, his finishing efficiency went up. Like, during the last month of the year, he shot like 70% at the rim. And he just really figured out kind of the angles. He dominated EYBL. If you go back and you watch his EYBL stuff, he was probably the second best player in EYBL, in my opinion. Like, just in terms of pure statistical domination, he was kind of on another level. And I just think guys that smart with the types of physical advantages he has, good first step and strength, who also just have a hard skill that'll get them on the floor, like his shooting, like those guys are underrated as star bets. There's a lot of names that come up, but I don't think a lot of people saw Tyrese Halliburton, best player on a championship team, coming. But I think there's a lot of the similar kind of intangible aspects. I don't think a lot of people saw the type of star Devin Booker became, but I think there's a lot of the same physical attributes. And so, I think that we sometimes overthink, oh man, what are star outcomes? And when I think about the types of guys that tend to fall and then produce all-star level outcomes, I think Kon kind of fits in that with his intelligence and the one really hard skill. So if there's a way you could get him to Atlanta, like I'd be willing to move quite a bit to make that happen. But then other than that, I am kind of with you where it's like, even like Jock Jonas, I probably, even though he's at 4 on my board, I probably wouldn't move up to go get him. You know, Dylan Harper is kind of its own thing. You're not probably going to get up to 2 to draft.
No, that's not going to happen. He's kind of the only guy that you can't even. He's not slipping. If for some reason the Spurs don't want him, he would go 3rd. I think I'm pretty confident in that. But somebody will come up and get him. He's not falling very far. Everybody else, like maybe you could squint and they get to 6 or 7. And there's some guys in this class. We don't speculate this too much, but like I think Queen could fall to 13. I think Jock Jones could fall to 13. I'd be surprised if Malawatch did at this point in time, but like it wouldn't blow me away. I don't think Edgecombe or Johnson or Bailey's going to get all the way down there. Whether they should or not is a different discussion. But so you're kind of looking at like the guys on again, not to go back to the consensus board, but the guys between from 7 down, I would say, which starts with Kon more than I'm looking at right now. It's conceivable. I still think you probably have to trade up to get somebody like that. Although Queen, I mean, not to go down this rabbit hole too much, Derik Queen seems to be getting to 13 a decent amount in some of these mock drafts. I think there was a ESPN one of the mainstream ones had him going to 13, just going at 13 the other day. I was like, oh, interesting. That's a fall of some kind, and I get it. I get there's the questions about him, and in fact, while we're here. Do you like Derik Queen? What do you think about Derik Queen in general?
I do like Derik Queen. I like him quite a bit, with the caveat that I think he is fairly coach dependent in terms of he has to have a coach that is willing to use him creatively. Listen, I think there's a lot of kind of just real wiggle and advantage creation there from a legitimately big guy. My concern is different than a lot of people's concerns. I actually think the defense is probably fine as a power forward. Like, I think he can move his feet better than you realize. He's really strong. He kind of has weird body proportions. He can't guard in the post at all. But like, I'd be pretty shocked if he's not at least like a competent defensive player, unless just the motor is that bad. But he's also just really smart. Like, he just kind of will make the smart man play sometimes where he'll just get a steal you don't expect, or he'll box someone out really hard. And he's a really, really good rebounder, which I think goes underrated sometimes in terms of your ability to survive on the floor. But like, Julius Randle has made a solid defensive player for himself with primarily being survivable on the perimeter and just a really positive rebounder with some grab and go juice too. I think Derik Queen is flawed mostly because he's really old for his class. He's like his rookie season will be his age 21 season. And so he's kind of spent his whole, prospect life dominating kids younger than him, which is not usually a great sign. And when you're older for your class and you still haven't kind of fixed some of the notches, that people have had on you for a while, he's not a consistent jump shooter, even though I think I buy the shot. Like, the touch is just so good. He was a good free throw shooter. I think the form is fine, if a bit wooden, I suppose. But like, he's always been a pretty high turnover guy. He's always been kind of out of shape. That stuff worries me. But I think, like, as a star bet, there's not many better in this class. Like, I just think that he's such a good advantage creator. He's smart enough, and he is the type of guy that someone tweeted this, and I wish I remembered who it was, but they said, I think you're going to have to guard him with 2 people in the NBA. And that's kind of enough sometimes. Like, if you guard him with a smaller guy, he'll beat him in the post. If you guard him with a bigger guy, he'll get by him and force help. I think Derik Queen will consistently force help all the time in a way that I'm just really, no one else in this class am I as sold on that aspect on other than Derik Queen. Like I don't think anyone is as good an advantage creator in this class, including guys like Jock Jonas and Harper, just because I think theirs is a bit more dependent on kind of the actions around them, where Queen can just kind of do it. And he's done it all the time over the course of his career. And so, if you just want to take a bet on a special skill, I think Queen is a perfectly fine bet there. But you got to acknowledge that there is a really low floor there. If you can't get him to be a competent shooter and he can't learn to be a more consistent playmaker, then offensively you're talking about someone who's really limited, and defensively, as much as I think he's fine, he's never going to be good enough to derive a ton of value on that end of the floor.
This show is sponsored by Betterhelp. Let's talk about something that does not get talked about enough, and that is men's mental health. There's this pressure to keep it together, always to perform and to provide, and never to show weakness. But the truth is, real strength comes from opening up and taking care of your mental well-being and yourself. Every year, 6 million men in the U.S. experience depression, and many of those go undiagnosed. Talking to someone in your life, though, a friend, a loved one, or even a therapist can make a huge difference for you. And therapy is not just for crisis moments. It's great for learning how to set boundaries and build healthy coping tools and be the best version of yourself. With over 35,000 licensed professionals, BetterHelp also makes it easy to find a licensed therapist who understands you. You can also connect from anywhere, switch therapists at any time, and fit sessions into your schedule with just one click. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. That's BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. I want to ask you about a guy I haven't talked about much at all on the podcast, and I think I may not more now, and I'm going to explain why. And it's Noa Essengue is how you say his name. I think that's probably safe enough.
Yeah,
that's very Americanized, but you know what I mean. He is like, if not maybe Cooper's younger, but he's one of the younger guys in this class. For a while, you know, some of the Hawks chats I'm in were like, hey, this might be interesting as an upside bet. And now it seems like he's going to go in the top 10. Like he's got helium now to where I'll be kind of surprised if he gets to 13. Putting that aside, I know you guys on your show, Upside Swings, talked a lot about 4 international guys on your most recent podcast. He was one of them. You don't have to give me the hour explanation, but Essengue, what do you think of him as a prospect in the event that he does get to 13? Because I think that he'd be pretty intriguing at that spot as an upside play potentially.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I think he's good enough that you probably can't turn him down at 13.
Yeah.
You know, he is. To be fair, we recorded that podcast before either of his big playoff games.
Yeah, he's kind of doing the thing. So last year, and Ricochet was higher than him when this happened, but last year Ricochet had this like late surge on some boards because he had some really big games when he was still playing into May and June. And Essengue is kind of doing the same thing right now, where he's one of the few guys that's still playing basketball and in competition, and he's getting more attention, and that's deserved. He's been playing very well, which is helpful.
Yeah. It's the Bilal Koulibaly is what I've
that happened too.
Referred to it as, and yeah, I mean, I think Essengue. I think it's said Essengue. I could be wrong, honestly. You could be right. I could be.
I trust you more than me on this one, to be honest.
But you know, he is really interesting as he's like 2 days like younger or older than Cooper Flagg. Like it's something like they're that close. They're literally their December 20-something birthdays. They're as young as you could possibly be and still be eligible for the draft. So you know, he's putting up really good numbers in a good league. Not a, you know, right now they're playing Euro Cup, which is better. But, you know, he played a lot of his season for, you know, in the German league, the BBL, and it's not great. You know, it's okay. But like, you know, I'll give you a comparison is like, you know, Wemby and Bilal played in the Jeep Elite League, which is like way better. You know, it's just way more athletic. There's more former NBA players, and there's just you know, the league he was dominant. I shouldn't even say dominate. The league that he was putting up numbers in, and specifically as a finisher, I think that's the really intriguing thing is that he's really long. He's fluid. He kind of has the Wemby funk is just someone who like. He doesn't look like he knows how to move, but then he'll just kind of string together like all these kind of weird biomechanical things and end up making a layup on the other end. And that's really interesting. I do think he is kind of a ceiling swing, like in that I think he's a really good transition player, but he's undersized and under athletic to be like a roll man 5. Mm-hmm. And the ball skills are underdeveloped for him to be a true perimeter player right now outside of transition. So I like him a lot as a grab and go guy. I think he's a good decision maker. I think he's for his youth and his, physical size, I think he's pretty smart. But you'd be lying if you said there was a lot of tangible skill there. And he's the type of guy where I do have some worries that he would get drafted by a team like the Hawks and then get stuffed on the bench and just be a complete waste of a pick. Like, he needs game time to develop. So if the Hawks are going to take him at 13, I really hope that they're planning on putting him in games and letting him play through some mistakes, because I do think he's legitimately really interesting. And I think he could be, at his top end, the type of guy who drives winning basketball with his kind of two-way play. And I think he'd be really hard to guard. But there's a lot of, questions there, especially like the shot is really far away, even though the touch is good. Mm-hmm. The ball skills just aren't quite good enough for him to be someone who's going to have the ball in his hands all the time. They're really good for someone who is like 6'10" and super young, but they're not good for someone who is, you're projecting as like a playmaker in the half court. Like, he's not, he's going to get the Giannis comp, and there's some truth to that, in that he's super long and super skinny, and he's really fluid in transition. The difference is that Giannis played point guard even in a worse league. Like, he had the ball in his hands all the time. Mm-hmm. And that is just different for his development than Noa Essengue playing like a plurality of his minutes this year as a 5.
Yeah. Everybody wants the upside bet until it doesn't work. It's like, it's easy to sell to fans. Like, hey guys, this is a big upside swing. It's like, okay, not to use the parlance of your podcast, but it is true. No, I think he's probably the ultimate example in this class of someone who's not going to help you as a rookie. Like, a lot of these guys won't. In my opinion, rookies are bad. That's one of my taglines. It's true. I think he would be even a more extreme case of that. Like, if you're trying to win games, playing him is not going to help you do that this season. But that's also, again, that's not why you draft the player, but it's something to keep in mind, because, like you said, if you have a organization or a coach that's not willing to play him, or if there's not a mandate to play him, like, you're either going to have to put him in the G League and have him develop that way, which is, by the way, totally fine and shouldn't be stigmatized. Like, guys get better in the G League, and that should be an option that you use, even for a lottery pick. But if you're putting him on the court, you got to know what you're going to get into early in his career, and it might not be great, and that's okay too.
Yeah, no, but for what it's worth, right now, I'd be really surprised if Essengue falls past 6.
No, same. I think it's going to go very high. I mean, maybe not past 6, but like,
I just think the Wizards are going to really want him, to be honest.
And the Wizards and the French is pretty Wizardsy. Yeah, he's pretty Wizardsy. No, it's so funny. I mean, I have in my notes from probably only like a month ago where I was like, probably have to like almost not convince, but like, hey, this is a real option at 13 kind of explanation. And now it's like, oh, he's going to go before the Hawks can pick him, even if they want him. So, I always want to ask about him just because he's a pretty intriguing player. All right, that is all for part 1 with myself and Bryce Hendricks. As I said before, part 2 should be available in this same podcast feed as soon as part 1 is over. So whether it's Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. So please go and listen to that one as well, or watch it and tell your friends. Please subscribe to the show. Follow us on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me on that platform at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. You can follow my non-podcast work at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody, part 2 is available right now, and we'll see you all next time.